Hello, everyone. Sorry, I'm a few minutes late getting started. The truth is that I'm very in a kind of an emotional state today. I woke up that way, and I've been having words. Been having things that I felt I needed to share with you all day long. So the moment has finally arrived. Usually, I'm trying to do soul bites, text-based little bite-sized pieces on Mondays, but this is important. This is important. Okay, so I want to start by just telling you how I woke up. I woke up feeling super disrupted. To be very honest, I've had a tremendous amount of disruption in my life in the last several months. Some of you know about it, some of you don't. I'm torn about whether I should talk about it so much, but let's just say that my husband had emergency eye surgery 2.5 weeks ago, and that was by far the least of it. It's been really crazy events, and that's all in the background of Corona and everything else that everyone is going through. So I woke up this morning, and I had to ask myself, like, what is the point of all of this destabilization? And being the person that I am, that I've come to be at this point in my life, I asked myself then, like I said to myself, you know, if this is what is, God is doing it on purpose. And what could be the reason? What is being called out of me through this disruption? What is being called out of all of us through this incredible disruption that just keeps getting more and more disruptive? And yeah, so, and then a friend asked me, you know, a friend expressed fear of what was going on, of, you know, vaccines or forced, but all kinds of things. I don't even want to say too many hot words, because there are part of what's going on in the disruptive period is that there are algorithms in Facebook and other big tech media that social media that tend to shut people down if they say anything meaningful. So, you know, meaningful in terms of current events. So really I have a deeper message, but we cannot ignore what's happening. Like I couldn't ignore, you know, there's only a certain amount that you can override what's going on in your life to a certain degree as a strategy. In the beginning, if something disrupts you from your goals or your stable space, it's not a bad idea to try to just do what you can to get back there. Because, you know, ultimately at the end of the day, we're here to be healthy and happy and produce and influence and, you know, make a difference for ourselves and for others. And joy breaks through boundaries, and health is a mitzvah, it's a divine commandment to do everything you can for your health. Shmartim es nafshosechem me'od, just take excellent care of yourself. But at the end of the day, when things continue to disrupt, whether it's personal or whether it's cosmic, global, emotional, whatever it might be, we have to take a step back and ask ourselves, what is going on here? What is being called out of us? So I want to explain some things about that. And then I want to explain, for those who are interested, my take on what's going on in the world. Because I tend to shy away from saying too much about that. I've been kind of dipping my toe in that area, in that little water a little bit lately, but you know, it's mostly all anybody's thinking about, unless they're super disrupted, God forbid, in their own lives. And even then, you know, I have grandchildren that I haven't seen, children and grandchildren. I moved to Israel with 4 children. Two of them got married and moved back to North America and had beautiful kids. I don't see those kids. And I have a grandson that I haven't met. He's already, you know, here since the end of May. And so these things are affecting all of us in all kinds of ways. Okay. So ultimately, I've talked before about this concept in Torah. It's called Hesech Hadas, H-E-S-E-C-H, H-E-S-E-C-H. That's Hesech, which means a removal. Hadas, H-A-D-A-A-S. Das, that means consciousness. So Hesech Hadas is a removal or a kind of an uprooting. The word doesn't mean uprooting exactly, but it's a removal of your consciousness or your focus, which often is translated or interpreted as meaning that people are getting distracted. Yeah, that's for sure true. But that's not really what Hesech Hadas is. Hesech Hadas is associated with the coming of the Messianic era, with the coming of Mashiach and the redemption, because it involves a process within us that must happen if we are to get from point A to point Z intact and well. In fact, even better than well. Okay, so Hesech Hadas, the removal, the upheaval, the letting go of, the disconnection from a previous paradigm, a previous way of thinking, previous limitations, previous, all of that is involved. I have a lot to say, so I'm going to try to move fairly quickly. So there's an account in the Gemara and the Talmud between two sages who are talking about the idea, the fact that at the end of days, at the end of times, we will be redeemed. The world will be redeemed. The world is not going to be destroyed. Hey, if you were wondering, good news. It's not going to be destroyed. It doesn't mean that it's going to be easy to get there. It's already not easy, but we can make it easier through our willing change, through Hesach Hadas and moving. You have to let things move you, okay? That's because that's where we're going. That's the divine vision. That's the divine process. That's the divine plan. So understand that everything that's happening, it's not just because random, this person, that person, whoever you think the villain is. I have my strong opinions, which I'm going to start sharing. But that's not the point. The point is that there is a cosmic process, a divine process that replicates in you, and you've got to align with it if you want to be okay. You do. That's it. Okay, so metaphor, Heskadas, it's leading to metamorphosis. It's leading to metastability. What is metastability? I'll talk about this more, but metastability is a move from our fixed state of being, our predictability of our world and our lives, which we call stability. Then we move into chaos with Hesach Hadas. We're moving, we're changing, we're morphing, we're transforming, we're transmuting, but it's not easy. Think caterpillar melting down. Think chicken cracking its way through this constricting egg. I mean, whatever, birth, whatever metaphor you want to use, they all work. They all work. They all describe a different part of this intense process. So moving from one state to another, you don't want to remain in chaos, or rather, you don't want to be continuously disrupted and destabilized by chaos. In the negative sense of the word, you want to move toward metastability. What does that mean? That instead of needing to be fixed to your previous way of being, your previous level of das, your previous comfort zone, your previous predictable, world, you need to be able to move. You need to be able to let things move you. And in order to let things move you and feel safe and be safe, you have to find a new place to anchor. What is that new place to anchor? Again, we'll talk about it more, hopefully toward the end. But that new place to anchor is in your desires, your purpose, your relationship with God, your relationship with your inner self, your inner soul, your inner power, your future, your vision. Okay, so I'm just going to throw that out there. For metastability, you have to be anchored into something that you can't see yet. Because what you've been having your eye on is moving, shaking, and leaving, right? That's the disruption. Okay, so there's this discussion between these two sages in the Talmud and the Gemara, and they're talking about how at the end of times, Mashiach will come, the redemption will come, and why? It says that at the end of times, the Jews, which I'm going to say Mashiach is for everyone. The Jews are simply the carriers here in this process. We've been holding this and enduring and developing, gestating, whatever, for a very long time. But this is for everybody. Everybody's in this together. So at the end of days, we will do tshuva. We will repent, not only in the typical sense of be sorry for your, yes, that's real. But also in a much deeper sense, teshuva means return. We will return, we will awaken, we will remember who we are, we will show up and activate our hidden beings, who we truly are and what we truly are. For ourselves, with our creator, with this world, and with each other. Okay, so one sage says in the end of times, the Jews will do tshuva, meaning everybody will do tshuva, and Mashiach will come, the Redeemer will come. And the other one says, but what if they don't do tshuva? What if they don't? And he says, well then, God, Hashem, will set up a wicked king. And that wicked king will create harsh decrees. And that will cause the people to do tshuva, and then Mashiach will come. So one way or another, we're going through this birth. That's it. We're going through it. Okay, so now I want to talk to you just a little preview. This is going to be a little longer than normal. I'm trying to do it fast, but it's very important. It's so important. So first I'm going to talk a little bit about Hanukkah and that light and what that means to us now. And then I'm going to give you my take on what's really going on here. So if you care about that, stay tuned. Anyway, so destabilization, disruption is part of the process. So Hanukkah is very much about that. Hanukkah is a commemoration, a reactivation of the light of a certain time in history during the Greek occupation of Israel, when the Greeks, who were very advanced and sophisticated in intellect and in body, in physicality and all of that, they had a problem with the God part of the Jewish tradition. They were fine with the wisdom of Torah, but not the God part. It was an anti-God, something to remember. How do you know good from evil in this time? Who's for God, really, and who's not? Not everybody has the same opinions. It's okay. You know, we're all trying our best here. None of us are being asked to be perfect or right on target with total truth. Not yet. But who's aiming in the right direction? So start asking yourself that question. And look, as I always say, look deeper, because people pretend. You know, they say there's a archetypal example of a food of an animal that's not kosher in Judaism. What makes an animal kosher, besides the kosher slaughtering process, is leave it aside if you're vegan. Don't worry about this. I'm making a point. Is the pig. The pig is the word for pig in Hebrew is chazer, which means choser, which comes from the root choser, which means it will return to its source ultimately. But the pig is called the ultimate deceiver, because the signs of a kosher animal are they have to chew their cud, and it has to be a mammal, chew their cud and have split feet. So the pig has split feet, and it's like he's fooling you. He's fooling you, which is a big theme for what's going on in the world right now. They're fooling you. A lot of people are fooling you. Okay, so we need to also learn to discern. Wisdom is a very big deal. Okay, so Hanukkah, at that time, when the Greeks tortured, killed, oppressed, suppressed, depressed, and repressed the Jewish people who were living in Israel at the time, one of the things that they did was they desecrated the temple, the portal between heaven and earth, and there was oil that was used to light the holy menorah, the holy menorah of the temple that was 7 branches. We light an 8-branched menorah. That's part of what Jews do at the 8 days of Hanukkah. 8 is a very special number. It's not an accident that it's the infinity sign, because it is the infinite divinity that runs through all of the 7 of the natural order. But they had to have very special oil to light the menorah. It had to be sealed. It had to be pure. And how did they know it was pure? It was sealed with the seal of the Kohen Gadol, the high priest. And after they desecrated the temple, there was no oil. There was plenty of oil, but no oil could be found that was sealed with this seal. And they did not use oil that was impure. And then one of the miracles of Hanukkah that we commemorate through the lighting of the menorah, is they found 1 vial of oil that was sealed with the seal of the Kohen Gadol, of the high priest, and it was enough for 1 day. And they lit it because they didn't know what was going to happen, but they knew what they had to do then. I'll repeat that. They didn't know what was going to happen tomorrow. There was no more pure oil, but they knew what they had to do then, and they had enough to get by then. And they lit the candle, the menorah, the first candle, and that oil burned for 8 days. Total miracle. Okay, we'll say more about that. The other miracle of the war was Melubash in Teva, was much more of a miracle in nature. And that was, there was a small group of people that insisted on not giving up on God. God told us to do this. We're not going to let you would do whatever you do to us. We're not going to let you take the God out of our Torah, out of our life. It's not going to happen. And those people were the Maccabees. And they fought, and there were bloody wars. And in the end, there were only a few of them. And I read in my last live on Friday, I read the section that we read on Purim and Chanukah in the Siddur, in the prayer book, that commemorates these miracles. And the big theme of that war was the few against the many. There were a few against the many, insurmountable odds. It's kind of like those of you who are, it's a little bit like the American Revolution, that there were, these farmers and pioneers with like unsophisticated that, against the Imperial British Army, etc. So the theme of the few against the many, and what is that? What is the inner theme of that? The inner theme of that is, don't be afraid of the majority. Don't be afraid of peer pressure. Don't bow down to what other people think or say. Don't be who people want you to be because they want you to be that because you're scared. Don't. We're all scared. I just read a definition of courage. What is courage? It's when there's something more important to you than your fear. Something more important to you than your fear. So what's more important to you than your fear? I want to ask you, is it your health? Is it your peace? Is it your happiness? Is it making a difference in the world? Is it financial prosperity? Whatever it is, find something that's more important to you than fear. Because otherwise you're going to be afraid, because everybody wants you to be afraid right now. So you and your convictions, whatever they may be, are the few against the many. Don't be affected by the mainstream as, who said it? The anthropologist, her name is slipping my mind right now. She said the famous anthropologist, her name starts with an E, from a few decades ago anyway. She said that don't underestimate the power of a few people to change the world. In fact, nothing else ever has. Okay, so everyone here is a leader. Everyone here is an influencer, whether you're activated or you're not activated. That's the next thing. And how do you do that? You want to connect more and more with your pure oil, the part of you that is untouched, the part of you that's not completely sunken into this story, because that part of you is eternal. That part of you is sealed and sacrosanct, sacred. And that part of you, and here's where the menorah comes in, and I'm going to current events, that part of you is the part that has the power to burn miraculously beyond any boundaries of the physical. It didn't burn 2 days, this oil, it burned 8 days, infinite. That part of you is infinite because it's divine. It's connected to the one, it's connected to the source. It is bound up with that. That is your pure oil. And that is part of tshuva. Back to the discussion between the sages. At the end of days, the people will do tshuva. They will wake up. They will repent. They will return. They will return to God, to their purpose, to their true selves. And what are you returning to? That pure oil. So when we are moving out of stability into chaos, when there's disruption, where what's being called out of us? Our pure oil. Awake, awake, awake. Return. And that's the message. It's one of the other messages, and not only messages of Hanukkah. I don't want to use the word message because that's like commemorative, it's like evocative. Yeah, sure, all that. But it's much more than that, because this is a divine light that came into the world through the portal of time in the 8 days of Hanukkah. And it is here again now on a higher level. We're spiraling always up higher and higher, bigger and bigger. Now the whole world is, and we have the infinity of the pure holy oil and the few against the many, and you activating this, the chaos, the destabilization, the disruption that's pulling you into metastability. What is that? That is anchoring your vision in the divine vision. You're part of it. What if your oil, and I want to just ask you for a second before we go into current events, just check in with yourself for a second. Ask yourself, if my pure essence were to shine, what would that look like? What would I be doing? How would I wake up each day? How would I go sleep at night? Because here, when you go to sleep at night with certain things on your mind for the next day, you wake up differently. That's one of the resolutions that I really want to take on. Because sometimes I go to sleep really tired, and then I'm like on Twitter trying to find out what's really going on or whatever. And I wake up and like this morning, like, what? So we want to be more focused, anchored again in our future vision. Again, back to metastability. When stability gets disrupted and chaos moves you forward, so you want to anchor into the future vision, God's and yours, and align yourself with that in your thought, speech, and action. Okay. Deep breath. So just take a moment. What is it that if you were to activate your pure oil, if you were to anchor in your real vision, if you were to ask, you may not know the answer, start asking yourself questions, because that's so powerful. That opens the chachma, the right brain, which is connected to the source. And when that right brain asks a question with yearning and holds it, you might not get an answer the first day or the second day or the first week, or you might. And you might get more answers over time, because it's infinite up there and it's coming down here, a drop at a time, a flash at a time, and then integrating into our being. That's part of tshuva. But ask yourself, what is it that God is calling out of me? What is it that this disruption is meant to awaken in me? And just hold the question. And you can share the question with your friends, because guess what? Even though we're the few so far, there's a lot of strength in numbers. And every like attracts like, and every person who starts to vibrate into their pure oil will attract others likewise, will support others likewise. You think you're not changing the world? Every second when you're doing that, think again. All right, so here's where here's where I'm going to venture a little bit into new waters, sort of. I might have touched on this a little bit. I'm just letting you know, I'm going to try to use minimum numbers of censorable words if I can. Anyway, so here's where the friend asked me this morning, like, what's going on? She expressed being very scared, like about the V thing that they poke you with, or about the C thing that they scare you about, and you have to cover your face because of it. And you have to stay far away from other people because of it, and who's telling the truth and who's not. And then there's the E thing, like, was it valid or was it not? But who's going to be in charge there in America, and how's that going to affect the world? Okay, that's my camouflage titles here. So here's how I see it. And this is not only based on my spirituality, but it's based on a lot of, I can't tell you I'm doing original research. I have no sources in intelligence other than the ones that I think I might have found online, who I listened to for a while. I have been intensely following the T person who's in charge of America I'm probably exaggerating, but who knows? It's fun. Since about a year before the election, a year and a half, maybe, the original 2016, because of Rabbi Kessin. Because Rabbi Kessin, if you haven't heard him, I've interviewed him. He's really worth listening to. He said something that I didn't believe. I didn't know who he was. And he said, because of his calculations, and he explained them according to Torah, and to assist in the messianic process, Esav, the descendants of the brother of Jacob, of Yaakov, who represents the West and Christianity and so forth, and is mostly represented in America. The center of power is America, which represents what he calls the goodness of the Tov Esav, the good part of Esav, has to become strong. Why? Has to have a revival, because they're meant to help their brother Yaakov. They're meant to help the Torah mission. It happens to be that America is a country in which Torah has been not only very freely allowed, one of the first places, probably the first place in the world, but it's been, supported in many ways and respected in many ways, and still is more than ever before. So when the superpower of Esav is against you, you have to struggle pretty hard. When the superpower of Esav turns around and is a supporter of yours, that changes the picture. That's, again, in favor of God's agenda. Remember, I said good is, maybe I didn't say this time, but good is defined as reveals God, supports God's agenda in the Torah. Evil, the opposite. So if you want to know who's promoting good and evil, look at what's happening here. So I didn't know anything about the politics of the subject, but I was kind of fascinated, and I watched, and I didn't know if his prediction was going to come true. I was pretty disconnected. I didn't even know who was in the primaries or anything in 2016. I had no idea. I still don't actually know. But I got hyper-focused on what was happening, and I watched closely. I watched the tweets. I watched the executive orders. I watched the controversy. I started listening to different YouTubers. I started to listen. Whenever I found someone who seemed to have more intelligence, more information on a deeper level, I listened. Okay, and I haven't stopped. It's one of the reasons there's circles underneath my eyes right now. Not the only one. But anyway, so what it looks like to me is, and I think it's important to know this, not that it changes anything, it enhances things, because God acts through the universe. Remember what I said about the two sages debating what's going to happen at the end of days. Are the people going to return and wake up? Or if not, then God's going to appoint a wicked king who's going to enact harsh decrees, and they're going to return and wake up. See any harsh decrees going on around you? I see some harsh decrees. I think that so far the main harshness is that it's made us all terrified, although for some people it's been ultimately harsh as it gets. So the point is not to go into fear. The point is to use fear to catapult you into vision and into connection, into metastability. So here's the deal. I perceive, based on, as I said, quite a bit of thinking, quite a bit of research, and with the full knowledge that I really don't know, and that probably nobody knows except for very few people who are running the whole thing. But it seems that there are 3 different levels, or 3 different core, let's say, actors. So there is such a thing as there is a hidden agenda, as I've been talking about. Probably Eisenhower warned about it when he said, beware the military-industrial complex. Kennedy warned about it when, in a very strong way. If you haven't heard his speech to the journalists about transparency, you might want to listen, because he said that there exists he used a stronger word, but a vast network of people in every walk of life: business, medicine, politics, science, communications, and there were more, I don't remember, finance, and that basically he explains that they mean to take us over. They mean not for our good. And that was when was that? 1963. When did he say the speech? Maybe 61, 62, I don't know. But in any case, we know what happened to him. And if this thing has been festering since at least that far back, I believe that it comes from way, way, way back. I have speculation about, if these people are the reincarnation of the Tower of Babel, where they meant to make war against God, and etc. And they were dispersed all over. It doesn't matter for right now. But the point is that there is, in every country, in every system, there are layers of embedded agenda holders whose intent is not the freedom of humanity, not the well-being of humanity. It's just the fact. It's the case. Why? I don't know. It's always been like that, right? Since the times of Nimrod, since Cain killed Abel, there have been people and groups of people that don't wish well to others. And if you don't believe it and you don't see it, you've got a problem, because it's here. And burying your head in the sand is not going to help. Not only that, waking up is part of what we have to do, because I'll tell you something else. Primarily, the Jewish people, the descendants of Jacob, of Yaakov, and the Western people, the descendants of Esau, they have two overlapping but different focused roles in this play, in this construction process, this divine construction process. Primarily, Esau, the West, that group is their imperative as a general whole. Obviously, everybody plays, everybody has a part in everything, and everybody has individual pathway. But in general, their job is to create a world of justice and righteousness, where the evil is exposed, where it's not allowed, where these hidden agendas are not allowed to take over, where man is not allowed to operate to the detriment of his fellow man, and where laws are not only created but fairly enforced in order to make sure that happens. And all ultimately because there's a recognition that there's a God, there's a truth, there's a plan. The primary purpose or mission of Jacob, of Yaakov, is to bring down the light from above creation. Again, everybody has, a play and a piece of each other's role, but primarily to bring down the Torah. That's why it says that the Jewish people are meant to be a light to the nations. Okay, after thousands of years of oppression, that's taking a little time for many. But okay, we're in it together. We're brothers, right? Yaakov and Esau are brothers. They had a feud, and it's prophesied that at the end of times, they will be together again in full love. So that's the primary thing. So there's a lot. So there's, from the moment of the 2016 election and before, there was, like it reminds me of one of those movies where the Greek god is like throwing back the lightning bolts and they're shooting everything at him, and they're, missiles and swords and armies, and he's like, it's been an attack, and it's an attack against justice and righteousness. It's an attack against fairness and good people. I don't care what you think of the political players. It's not relevant. This is a divine story. So it looks like there's been an ongoing enormous attempt. Like Trump said he would drain the swamp, and the swamp is fighting back big time. And the latest, and it's not only inside of America, it's inside other countries. There are foreign actors involved. There's infiltration. There's attack from outside. There's attack from within. Most of it, thank God, as insidious as it is being carried out in the information realm and behind the scenes. So most of us are still okay. We're scared. We're disrupted, but we're still okay. Remember, it's a divine process. So when we look at things that make us scared, there are three possibilities. One of them is that it's I'll call them the black hats, who really have the intention of frightening you into submission, frightening you into doing things that are not in your interest, frightening you into suppression. Okay, that's level number one. Level number two is more tricky. That's what I would call the white hats, where they, at one hand, want to calm you down so that you don't go into submission. Remember the Maccabees, the few against the many. We are not here to go into submission. That is not why you're here. You're here to be an influencer for the good, for the righteousness, for the truth. And if you don't know what that is, look deeper. But just know who you are. Know who you are. Don't be scared into silence or submission. That is not cool. Okay, so the second level, the white hats want to calm you down, keep you from being scared into silence or submission. At the same time, it seems probable that they want you to be scared, but not into submission, into standing up. Just like those two sages arguing in the Talmud, in the Gemara, and here's the third level, God also wants you to be scared, not so that you could stay scared. I know that might be a controversial statement, but you can easily figure out that it's true because God is running everything and you're scared. So God wants you to be scared as a starting point. Why? Wake up! Wake up! Stand up! Whatever that means to you. Don't be a sheep. Don't be silenced. Don't live in fear. When there's a very big distinction given in Authentic Kabbalah and the Tanya specifically between the difference between bitterness and guilt. Guilt is a muddy emotion. Guilt sinks you down into shame and hopelessness and despair. That's like level number 1, black hat. Fear has that quality also, certain fear. Cower in the corner, hate everyone around you, don't know what to do, gets, God forbid, sick from it, God forbid. Anxiety, depression, anger, it's real, but you don't need to be subject to it. You are free. You just have to look deeper with intention, with prayer, with courage. Courage again means caring about something more than your fear, something more important than your fear. What's more important than your fear? What's that pure oil of you? What's the future vision? What is it that you really want to see in the world? Okay. So level number 2, they have to do this trickier thing where on one hand, they calm you down from the things that suppress you, but they rile you up. So guilt, I was saying, guilt is a muddy emotion that pulls you down. Bitterness, on the other hand, is a holy emotion. Why? Because when you get bitter, excuse my language, you get pissed. And what does that do? That gives you energy. That makes you move. And that's the kind of fear that is holy fear. So we have the unholy fear of the black hats, the holy fear of the white hats, and then the cosmic awakening of God, who is giving us in Hanukkah the power of the holy oil. The light of Hanukkah, the menorah, is meant to be placed. There's some customs that have it placed in the door, facing out into the marketplace, so to speak, and some in the window. But the idea is that the light is your light that shines out, that is progressively activated through 8 days and shines out into the world to illuminate the world. Do it. You're here to do it. Really. Okay, last but not least, I want to say something about there's a controversy in between 2 sages, not the same 2 sages, but 2 sages who were the enactors of the Code of Law, the original codification of Jewish law, in the times when the Sanhedrin, the huge governing body of legal authorities, debating how the Torah should be applied, was in existence in Jerusalem, in Israel. May it be soon again. Anyway, they were the greatest sages, and there were 2 leaders that each was a leader of a different group. One was named Hillel, may have heard of Hillel, and one named Shammai. If you're not very familiar, you probably heard of Hillel, you might not have heard of Shammai. Hillel has houses on every campus, and Hillel is the one who said, if I am not for myself, who will be for me? If I'm only for myself, who am I? And if not now, why? If not now, when? And that is, one of his most famous statements. But anyway, Hillel and Shammai had a controversy about which way we would light the candles, whether we would start with 8 and then diminish one each day. That was Shammai's opinion. Or Hillel's opinion was we start with 1 and then we raise in light every day. And primarily the difference, there are many discussions about the differences between Hillel and Shammai, but Hillel was representing the majority of where the majority of people were. I want to say he was representing the holy vessels, the creation of vessels. How do we create vessels? And this is a message to you. Don't be overwhelmed. Do one thing. Identify a piece of your vision, or at least the question. Do one thing, even if it's only to ask the question, even if it's only to go into prayer and ask for discernment, even if it's only to make a resolution to follow some kind of whether it's a Torah authority or whether it's some kind of, deeper information on whatever level about your health and what decisions to make and what's cool and what's not cool, with you. One thing, start with one thing, one vessel to shine your light to move forward. And the 2 themes of Hanukkah, the few against the many, standing up for truth and for goodness against lies and evil, and burning the pure oil, activating and bringing light from the pure oil in a miraculous way, in that way of 8. So anyway, Hillel was about adding the light one at a time, because that's where most of us are at. Forward progression, step by step. At least that's where most of us were at. Shammai, his thing was the future vision. Shammai's Torah, Shammai's decision, it says Elu ve'elu divrei Elokim chayim. Both of their opinions were correct. It's just that one was more applicable to the state of being of the people of the time. But when our state of being changes, when we do tshuva, when we wake up, when we return, so then we're ready for a completely new level. And guess what? Part of metastability, this disruption leading to awakening, is like the Torah of Shammai. We still light the candles starting with 1 and then going up to 8, which is very beautiful, because then on the 8th day, Zos Hanukkah, you have this massive light in the number of 8 and the infinity pattern that brings it into the coming year. Whoa, it's incredible. But Shammai starts with the vision. and then moves backwards. You see the vision? You see where you're going? You see where you're going? To get to this vision, you will have had to light 8 candles. You will have had to build 8 levels of vessels to hold this light. Now work your way backwards. That is an extremely powerful way of getting yourself across that gap from the known future through the minefield of unknown chaos. Sorry, from the known past, excuse me, through the minefield of unknown chaos into the vision-based divine future. That's the energy of Shammai. And we want to download that now. So I want to end with that by inviting you to look into your being, whether it's now or in a state of prayer, later on, or take a journal and write. It's so helpful to just pour out your heart to yourself, you know? There are different levels of you, and one can be speaking and the others can be listening and answering, and it really does work like that. Or connect to any great tzaddik that that you feel specifically connected to, or talk to a friend or a coach or a therapist. It doesn't matter. But what is your future vision? What is being called out of you through this disruption as part of the messianic process? What is good about you, meaning revealing God and your truth, the purpose of your soul, and what is covering it up, what beliefs, what fears, what behaviors, what patterns, what associations, and how are you going to activate that hidden light by leaning into the power of metastability, throwing your mountain grappling hook, if that's the right term, into, throwing that hook up into a higher mountain, into your vision, and then pulling yourself up. 8, 7, 6, 5, 4, 3, 2, 1, and you're in it. You're in it, and that's we're doing this collectively. I also want to say, it's been long, but I do want to say that I believe very, very much that, I'm not sure, as much as I can be of anything as a human being that I see on a physical level. I believe that, I know that the document, which lays out, starting with Conste, and ending with Tujin, that lays out, the core principles of America, says that when the president is sworn in, he swears to protect and defend the people from all enemies, both foreign and domestic. And basically, America and the world is literally under attack right now. And it's not a matter of, votes here and though the cheating was as creative and as widespread as anything, and beyond anything anyone could imagine. That's the case. However, it's really on a much deeper level. There's a hostile takeover attempt, and it's been going on for a long time. And so, lest you be discouraged by that, I don't know what anyone's politics here is, but if you've stuck with me this long, you probably feel more or less, at least in the half that I do, about which is the side of right and good, and who is creating justice and righteousness, and who's doing that job, who's our big brother. So I believe that his name starts with T at the moment. But anyway, this is a military. Underneath the surface, yes, there's the media, and there's a firewall from the mainstream media, and the alternative media is confused. Some of them know more, some of them know less. Probably nobody knows everything. You have to really discern your way through and know that you don't really know. But underneath, it doesn't change anything about Chanukah, about your pure light, about the 8, about the small against, about the Geula, about the redemption, the messianic process. That's all underlying it, and that's the main thing to remember. There are a lot of points to remember here in this live. It's long, and I really feel like it's so important. I hope you listen to it again. Oh, by the way, I'm not done. I'm almost done. But if you do like this, then please like it. And if you resonate with it, share it. And if you have any comments, make the comments, because that will give it more, even though the algorithms are very tough. It's much tougher to get exposure than before. But anything that you can do if you resonate with it to get it out to more people would be better. I think would be better. My contribution. Okay. So there's the information war level, which is being conducted on various fields and with censorship and with, etc. Many people have been deplatformed that I followed. Many people are no longer on YouTube because they were just kicked off. They're essentially Trump's tweets, basically. Okay, that's the higher level, the top level, the most surface level. Then and the fear mongering and the constantly keeping you destabilized on purpose. That's for sure. Then underneath it is the attempt to go through the justice system, which either will or will not work. Because all corruption must be displayed for people to see unmistakably with their own eyes. That's in the process of happening. So don't be dismayed when it's happening, because if it's there, better out than in, If you ever saw like that scene in Harry Potter with Hagrid when he vomited up slow, better out than in. And that's part of the process, part of what's happening. Underneath it is a military process. Underneath it, there is. And thank God it's being conducted by, by people who seem to be pretty righteous. Because I'm telling you, they're not allowed to give up because they swore to it. And because there's a hostile takeover, and it starts America's the center, because America's the center of Esav, the big brother, because we're in the Messianic age. And it's a land with a lot of good values, and it's based on the Sheva mitzvahs, on the 7 Noahide laws, in terms of its founding, and in terms of that's been ratified by various legal groups a number of times. And so it's got to be on the ascendancy, and it's got to be ruled by those who are connected to the divine agenda in some ways that they're aware of consciously, in some ways they're not aware of, and it doesn't matter because they're malleable to it. They're aligned with it. Okay, so anything you hear, know that it goes way, way deeper, level after level. And anything that you fear, look to discern, where is the message of Chanukah there for you? And when you feel destabilized, again, metastability, from stability, predictable past, to chaos, unpredictable present, woe, disruption, to anchoring into a future. That message of Shammai, look at the vision completed, and then go backwards and align. Okay, long life. Thanks for hanging with me, and lots of love. Mwah. Happy Chanukah. Chanukah Sameach, Chag Sameach, Freilich Chanukah, whoever you are, wherever you are. Fight for the light. Lots of love.